guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at not at itchjessino anymore. It's Jessino tweets, whatever. You can follow me on Twitter at SheKnowsArsenal. And yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a couple of days. We have some catching up to do. We have some things to talk about. There's a lot of Arsenal news. We haven't played a lot of football, but there's a lot of Arsenal news. So we're going to touch on it. The majority of what we're going to talk about today on the show is going to be about Vlahovic. That is over the last maybe 2 hours or so. Everything is just kind of amped up just a little bit more. So we'll talk about it. There's been also another update on where we are with that deal. And I just have some questions for you guys. We're just going to kind of chat amongst each other. I'm going to bring your comments up here. I'm going to ask you guys some questions. So yes, today's going to be a very interactive show. I will give you the news. You can react to it. We can talk about it, all those great and wonderful things. Let me know in the chat box how you guys are feeling. Are you excited? Have you been enjoying, all the tears that have been coming from rivals because we didn't play our game against Tottenham? Let me know. I have very much so been enjoying this. And before we do get started, what I want to say is that one thing that I'm not going to touch on is the situation with DT from AFTV. That is not what I would like to talk about on the stream. I won't be addressing it beyond this moment. That has nothing to do with this show. I have nothing to add to it. So if that's something that you want to talk about, I won't be talking about it here. So there you go. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the chat box, how you guys are feeling, all those types of things. Let's see. Vlahovic clip, chip. Yeah, that was a very nice goal. As soon as I was writing the title for the show, like, should we move on from him or move on from our pursuit of Vlahovic? He scores the goal just like, I mean, you can't write this stuff, can you? I do have a community poll up right now. If you guys want to go ahead and vote on it, it's whether or not you think that we should move on from Vlahovic. Tamina says Vlahovic waves goodbye to his old team and waves goodbye to the fan in Italy. Jess, we will talk about that as well. That's a part of the reason why the news about Vlahovic has been amping up just a little bit more. It's been quite quiet today, but scoring the goal and then that odd gesture that he made at the end of the game made Arsenal fans feel as though that might be a sign to him leaving the club. We can talk about that a little bit more. Maxwell says, watched him closely today. He's going to take time to settle in the Prem. That's something else I want to talk about is, the adaptation and big transfers and how they settle into the Premier League. Mr. Austin says these Vlahovic links got to stop. We just need to get another striker and look for something more serious in the summer. Craig says Arsenal play when they want. Exactly. The one thing I will say about Vlahovic is that he is more well-rounded than I thought he was when I first saw him. He is growing on me a little bit, but that being said, they usually grow on me and then we don't sign them. So there you go. Three Men's talk on football. Are Arsenal financially capable to sign Vlahovic? We've always had money. Arsenal have always had money. We just have always had, owners that didn't know what they were doing. If you can spend 72 million on Nicola Pepe, you can definitely buy Vlahovic. We spent 150 million last summer, and we have released a lot of the wages from moving on from Ozil, Mustafi, Socrates, David Luiz. There's been a lot of players that have come off of that wage bill. We also know that Lacazette will be coming off the wage bill. So we have done a lot of work to free up space for big signings. And if you look at how much the owners are worth in the Premier League, the Kroenkes are actually worth more than the Glazers. The issue is that they have gotten to a point where now they have to spend the money to get back into Champions League. And when we were in Champions League, they didn't have to spend the money. It was almost like a money manufacturing kind of thing where the money would come in, we wouldn't spend any of it, and it would just keep circulating. That money is no longer coming in because we've been doing poorly over the last maybe decade, but more specifically the last 5 years. So the Kroenkes are spending money, and it was never a matter of, do we have the money? Are we broke? Are we not? We're not broke. We're just poorly managed. And so you don't go through the you don't go through the process of speaking to the agent and speaking to the player and agreeing a fee with the club in Fiorentina if you don't have the money to pay. That's not how it works. Now, that's not to say that we won't try to break it down into payments, which is something that people have always spoken about as something like, oh, only broke clubs spend in or try to pay in installments. Everybody pays in installments. It's the smartest way to get transfers done so that you can spread your money across a couple of different transfers and pay over time. We do that in our regular lives as well, breaking down payments for things. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that we would be looking to do, but Arsenal have the money to buy Dusan Vlahovic. Now, do we want to pay his agent fees? That's a whole nother story. So that's what we're going to go ahead and jump into now. Make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. So Sky Italia reports that Dusan Vlahovic is demanding 8 million euros and his agent wants 10 million euros commission fee along with 20% of future sales. Those are the problems that present right now. So I'll read that again. Vlahovic is demanding 8 million and his agent is demanding 10 million commission fee along with 20% of a future sale. Those are the problems that present right now. So Sky Italia is basically reporting that that is the sticking point right now. I'm going to read a couple of more reports that have kind of come out today that don't necessarily tell us anything different, but also tell us that we're kind of in the same place that we've been over the last week. Local Fiorentina outlet Corriere Firenze confirms that Arsenal and Fiorentina have an overall agreement for transfer of Vlahovic, but are unaware of Vlahovic's real plans and those of his entourage. Total silence from the player's end. So basically what they're saying is that even though we have an agreement with Fiorentina, we don't have any sort of idea of what Vlahovic and his agent really want to do. So that's another aspect of this. Calcio Mercato had reported today that Arsenal have submitted an offer of 70 million for Vlahovic. Fiorentina wants to sell, which we know because he has 18 months left on his deal, but he is willing to wait until June, or he's willing to run his deal down. So essentially, I mean, you could sell to Arsenal now and get 10, the agent can get 10 million or whatever, and Vlahovic can get 8. But I think what they're banking on, or at least the agent is banking on, is that they get to the summer transfer window and whoever doesn't get Haaland will go after him. Because for me, what I'm looking at is he is being marketed as Haaland light, the next best thing if you can't get Haaland. So, which if you watch him play, he's beyond Mbappe and Haaland, the next level down. It's pretty like, okay, so we're talking about prospects and untapped talent. You're still going to have to pay a lot for them because they're quite talented. But when you look at Vlahovic, he's the only striker in that age range, in that prospecty group of strikers that actually has end product. The other strikers are kind of hit and miss, maybe 14 goals, max this season, 10 goals, 4 goals, whatever. He is putting up very consistent output for a player of his age, which can only really be looked at next to like the Haalands of the world. So they have marketed him as the next best thing to Haaland. So basically what his agent, in my mind, is banking on is that they bypass Arsenal, because you could go for the 10 million now and take that, or you allow a bidding war to come in the summer and get even more money from one of those clubs that don't get Haaland, or you let him run his deal down and Vlahovic gets a big pay bump or a big payout, and they just ride off into the sunset doing that. So there's a couple of different things working against us, because I think the agent views this as I could get a lot of money from this, but I think I could get more if I just wait. And that's if we're assuming that the agent is just like this crook, you know. I'm assuming that he's this guy that wants the money, but he can also be protecting his client by keeping him from going to the Premier League too early. Because we all know that you only arrive at the Premier League one time. And if it doesn't go right, it can really mess up your career. So we can think about it from that perspective as well. Maybe he's thinking he needs to stay in Italy, go to Juventus after he's run down his contract, get the payout, and then they can look for an even bigger move in the next 2 to 3 years beyond Juventus. So those are pretty much the reports that are out there now. And according to Fabrizio Romano, who for me, I take with a little bit of grain of salt when it comes to Arsenal, but he does have good connections in Italy, says Arsenal have still made no progress in convincing Duhan Vlahovic to join the club. So this could easily run until the end of the window, you guys. So it doesn't look like we're any closer to getting to any sort of agreement here. But my thoughts on this are that I just think Vlahovic's agent is playing this really smart in order to benefit himself. So he clearly doesn't want his client to move now. So he's making it a win-win situation for himself, where Arsenal will have to pay him a small fortune if they're able to get Vlahovic to Arsenal now. If we want to get him there now, he's going to get a lot of money for it. But he knows we're not going to pay that. I don't think we're going to pay that. I think that we're starting to get into silly money type of now. We're beyond like the 70 million that you have to pay. Plus, we're talking about 18 million on top of that, right? So he knows we're not going to pay it. But if we do, he's $10 million richer. So it's kind of one of those situations where this is the game that agents play. This is how they make their coin. You can't really hate the player. You have to hate the game. Agents do ruin everything for everybody. But I want to ask you guys, is Vlahovic worth this money to you? And how many over 50 million signings have been successful in the Premier League over the last 5 seasons? You may think that he's worth it in Serie A. Like this season alone, he has, it said 17 goals and 2 assists, but that might not have been including the one that he scored today. He could have had 2 goals today had he not missed his penalty. But we're talking about somebody that's on the cusp of, at halfway through the season, almost at 20 goals and 2 assists. So do you think that he's worth the money based on his output and what kind of striker he is? But do you have any reluctance around how he adapts to the Premier League and the fact that big money signings haven't really done well in the Premier League over the last 5 years? Let me know what you guys think in the chat box. Let's see what you guys are saying. Mo says, yes, he is worth it. Tony says, yes, he is worth it for the long term. He has great resale value. Rahandra says Vlahovic pays the agent and can't change the agent and can change the agent. Craig says, remember, Vlahovic is only 22. He is young. Don 1 says Fiorentina have accepted the bid, but the greedy agent wants 10 million euros. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. John P says, if they think this is the guy, we should pay it. Let's see. Vlahovic is worth so much. It's one of those where it's kind of like we're in the same position that we've been at, where nobody really knows what Vlahovic wants to do. But I'm just asking from your guys' perspective, do you guys worry about big name signings over the last 5 years? This is just devil's advocate. I know we've seen him play for Fiorentina and he's been brilliant. And he could be probably whatever he wants to be. But when you look at Sancho, when you look at Pepe, when you look at even Romelu Lukaku, like just, recently, Kai Havertz, big signings. You can even say like Thomas Partey, because we know that he's struggled with it. He's only 22 years old, going to Arsenal, a big club, trying to get into the Champions League and holding that $70 million price tag on his back at that young age Do you worry about him flopping in the Premier League? That has to be something that has to be spoken about. Compilations and stats cannot account for what it's like as a player to be holding up that level of transfer fee at such a young age, and we have done so well in that 20 to 30 million dollar range where the signings have been really really good and they've seemed to hit the ground running, but the signings that have been a little bit higher in price point, your Pepes, your Thomas Parties, you can even maybe say your Lacazettes, um, and Ben White, depending on what you think about him, we know that the higher the transfer fee, the more difficult it is for the player to adapt. So they're not only adapting to the Premier League, but he's very young, and we will have paid 70 million for him. So do you guys worry about that at all or not really? Rami says, can't worrying about the future paralyze you? I'm just saying, like, we got to go with ifs, ands, and buts, or else there's no point of doing a show. You know what I'm saying? Yo-Yo says, transfer fees don't determine a signing's performance. What kind of logic is that? I don't think, well, I'm not saying that, it determines it. But what I am saying is that it would be naive of us to not take that in consideration when you think about all the big signings. Like, you think about most of the big signings in the Premier League over the last 5 years, none of them have really hit the heights, or very few of them have hit the heights that we feel like they should have. And not only that, players have spoken about how the large price tag has hindered them from adapting as quickly because they were almost paralyzed by how big the transfer fee was. So even though, like, I'm not saying that big fee equals bad player equals flop. What I'm saying is that if we don't address it or even think about it, I think we'd be a little bit naive with our own, kind of experience with it, and not just our experience, but we're seeing it at other clubs as well, where those big transfer fees tend to weigh these players down. And so it's something that you have to look at. Io says, I have concerns over his ability to beat an EPL level press. Hopefully I'm overthinking it. Tony Glove says, our big name signing are normally the wrong age. We need Laka to settle him in. This would give him time to really flourish, but we as fans need to give him time. That's another thing is, what if he doesn't hit the ground running? What if he, are we going to give him enough time? Because if you don't have Aubameyang and you don't have Lacazette there to kind of be the senior striker, all of the striking is going to fall to his feet. And so you have 22-year-old Vlahovic adapting to the league, 20-year-old Martinelli, and 20-year-old Saka on the other side. Like, I mean, we're talking about a very young attack with very little experience trying to get Arsenal back into the Champions League. So yeah, it's something that I feel like you can talk about, without it being like, okay, for sure, I know it's going to happen, but you kind of have to look at it because he could flop, and it could be because the transfer fee is so big and the pressure is so much. Eli says, all City players have been 50 million and they're doing fine. For me, it's about talent ID and if the player suits the system. He fits both criteria. Well, City is like the perfect club, and they do everything pretty much right. So I hear what you're saying. I do think that when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the Man Uniteds, the Chelseas, even Liverpool with Naby Keita. I think they bought him for like 50, 60 million or something like that. And you can say he's a flop. So I think it's okay to talk about it, but I hear what you're saying. Like, as long as they fit the system and they fit what the overall, like, because when we bought Pepe, it was probably more about him just not fitting into what Unai Emery wanted, and then he also didn't fit into what Arteta wanted. But I still think that the transfer fee might have stunted him as well. So, but I do agree that he has to fit the system, and the talent ID needs to be there and all of that. So that is a very, very good point. Enzo says we have to take a gamble. Paul says, good evening. Do you think that we will sign Vlahovic in this window? I'm asking you guys that question. I'll let you guys know what I think at the end of the stream, but I want to know if you guys think we're going to sign him by the end of the window. Let's see. Doyen Sola says a player can only be given so much time. I'm also a bit skeptical about him. I mean, it's okay to be skeptical and to ask questions, because if we don't, I don't think we're really doing our due diligence here. And I think that, but I do think that with this current transfer group connect, like whatever it is, Adu and Arteta, they will, if they're going forward with this, I would imagine that they've thought about these things. And so, but it's still okay to talk about it. But yeah, so that's kind of my concern. But I do think that the agent is playing it so that no matter what he benefits, in terms of getting a large lump sum of money, a small fortune in his hand, no matter what happens. And yeah, I think that's what most agents would do. Now, my next question for you guys is, do you think that Vlahovic secures top four for Arsenal this season? If we were to, let's say, not get a midfielder, because right now, without our tour has fallen through as of now, and you could say that if we just wait a week or so, Thomas Partey will be back, and maybe we don't need a midfielder. So if we don't get a midfielder, do you think that the Vlahovic signing alone, if it were to get over the line, secures top four for Arsenal? If you're spending 70 million on a player, what kind of impact do you think he would make midway through the season for Arsenal? Mark Hines, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Mark Hines says, would be a good signing based off present performance. Can't see him going to Arsenal, though, especially if it's not this month. When Haaland is picked up, I think he'll be the second most sought after. Exactly. That is kind of what I said at the beginning. But you make a very good point, and I think a valid point, that if it's not this month, it probably won't happen at all. So if we want him, we have to go ahead and push for it. Let's see. Mr. Austin says no. He will not secure top four for us. Leroy says yes, he will. Stuart says yes, I do. So you do think that he will secure top four for us. Myth says a top striker might be the difference between top four and top six. Good, guys. Okay. Paul says, I do believe he does secure it for us. He is clinical. Funky Bunky says no. Cannon says no. Let's see. LA says Vlahovic can help, but without a CM, it's going to be hard unless Thomas Partey's coming back and is the Thomas Partey we've seen against City. I think the midfield is still a huge issue here that I'm not sure a striker completely covers up, but I do think it would make a difference. A quality striker would make a difference. Craig says Vlahovic would, if we get midfielders in this transfer window. Do you guys think we'll sign more than one player? I think we're kind of in the space where I think it's going to just be one signing. Like, I can't see more than one coming in right now. Don One says, yes, I do, but midfield would cement top three. Tony Glaive says he will not secure top four. He will hopefully keep us in the hunt. Dawson says it's time for Arsenal to behave like a big club or like a great club. Get him now. Summer bidding war may not be wise. If we don't get him now, I don't think we'll get him in the summer. That's my personal opinion on that. Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat. The Truth Sets Free says, yes, Vlahovic would get you top four because his goals would get you 7 more points over 17 games. Good point. That those goals could really be the difference between, being the top 6 and then top 4, just the goals alone, that maybe Lacazette is not getting right now. So good point. Tony says the squad right now, I think we tailor off squad with Dusan Vlahovic, a good chance. Squad with Dusan Vlahovic and ACM cements top 4. I think the center midfielder is definitely it has to come in. Like, I just don't see how we go without it. And people will say that, and this is just a sidebar because I do want to keep it on the striker situation mostly. But when you look at the center of midfield, I think people are thinking as long as we get through January, we'll be fine. Injuries and COVID aren't going anywhere. So we're always an injury away from, not our our top strength midfield. And so I would rather have somebody there that I know no matter what, if we get an injury or two, we can still put out a really strong midfield. I think you get 2 injuries, 1 COVID case here, whatever, you're back at this in this situation. So, and we know Thomas Partey has had his issues with injuries. And Xhaka can't stay on the pitch. He's been more unreliable than I've ever seen. He's usually there all the time, and he's been like so absent. So I think the midfield kind of needs to be solidified. Maxwell says no, we need to fit our midfield. We need to fix our midfield. Exactly. Yo-Yo says 34 and Partey are meant to secure the club's aims. Vlahovic isn't necessary. Yeah, so most people, it's like kind of half and half. Like it's kind of half and half. Some people think he will, and then other people don't think that he will help us secure top 4. And the midfielder is really important. So, yeah, we're about split there, which is kind of what I thought it would be. So Fiorentina played today against Genoa. I don't know what it ended as. I know it was like 6-0. When I last checked, yeah, at full time it was 6-0. Vlahovic missed a penalty, which he tried to do like a Panenka or something like that. And I saw all the tweets coming out saying like, oh, he's rattled by, the Arsenal rumors and stuff like that. Or I think what is even more funny was when people were saying he would fit in perfectly with Arsenal strikers missing penalties. But he scored his goal in the 51st minute, and he did this strange gesture, where he kind of looked like, he was doing like this, and it was strange. I know that he missed the penalty, but a lot of people kind of felt like, and were probably hoping that it was some sort of sign that he was telling Fiorentina fans goodbye. And he also hugged the manager as well during this whole sequence. And so I just want to ask you guys, do you think that means something? Are we just reading into it a little bit too much? Or do you think that there is a chance that he was telling his the fans that he's leaving? What do you guys think about that? Let's see. See, you guys let me know. If you guys saw the clip, let me know, because when I saw it, I thought it looked like he was saying sorry for missing the penalty, but players don't really do that though. Do they really say sorry for missing penalties? What do you guys think? Cinco says fans reading too much into it. Fair enough. Leopold says it means nothing. Daniel says, make of that what you will. Dr. Omieza says, well, for me, I think he was apologizing for the missed pen. Yeah. Tony Glaive says, Mr. V is really coming in to move us forward for next season. With European football, we have a crap squad. Jason says, he was showing that sign and crying while hugging the players when they were up 3-0 up at halftime. It's I don't know what I think it was. Yeah, Hamsik, looking for the clip. So many people posted it. All of the Arsenal Twitter people posted it. And I've never seen anybody apologize for a penalty, but that's what it looked like he was doing. But then also we know that Fiorentina is not happy with Vlahovic and his agent at the moment, because when a player and his agent are messing with things, it could disrupt the team. And we know Fiorentina wants to sell, and his agent and him have been silent, and it's causing issues, so it could have just been almost like one of those where maybe he's showing his kind of I'm sorry for, I'm committed, it could have been, I'm committed to you guys. You never really know. It looked like he was apologizing for the pen. Doyen Sola says, I feel like it's just mind games. Yo-Yo says, didn't see it, but Gooners are a desperate bunch. Yes, we are. Mo the First says, that was surely not an apology. I think it means something because it's Fiorentina's last game this month. Victor F says Vlahovic is also not a player that runs back like Laka. We need to really strengthen our midfield. So let's focus on that and get another striker instead of Vlahovic. So on that note, um, let's move on to my next kind of part of the show. There's about 215 of you guys here. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. There has been another report on Alexander Isak, which comes at a very interesting time because we seem to be having some issues with getting Vlahovic over the line. And this comes from, I cannot pronounce the name, but it's somebody who, let's see. I think he writes for The Athletic. Yeah, he writes for The Athletic. And he's basically talking about Arsenal transfer mailbag. It's in Spanish, so that's why I can't read his name. I'm sorry. I cannot do it right now. But basically when I translated the report, and I'll retweet it so that you guys can see it after. It'll be on I'll retweet it on SheKnowsArsenal. But it basically said Arsenal goes for Alexander Isak, and the last days of the winter market are going to be hectic. The reality society is calm. I don't know what the reality society is, but whatever. And he says, and even if they sign him, we would be talking about one of the highest incomes in history of football. I'm convinced that Roberto Alabay has one plan. So basically what the report is saying is that we are making some inroads with Alexander Isak. And so I wonder if that has something to do with us maybe making a backup plan just in case it doesn't work with Vlahovic. And somebody that I posted this on Twitter about the show that we were doing. Did Fabrizio? You guys don't make me go look if you didn't really. You guys do this to me all the time. You guys are like, Fabrizio tweeted. What did he? Okay. So here we go. This is what Fabrizio Romano just said right now. Fiorentina manager Italiano on Dusan Vlahovic's future. At the moment, we enjoy Dusan here at Fiorentina. He is with us. I don't know about the future. He scored a great goal today. I see him very motivated, and he is relaxed. Basically, they ain't saying nothing about nothing. He just said basically that they're enjoying him now. But we kind of know that they want to sell him now because if they don't, he could just run his deal down. But going back to Isak, seeing that report now in the midst of what's going on with Vlahovic kind of makes me think a little bit like, okay, are we trying to build our backup plan just in case we can't get Vlahovic over the line? And so when I was talking about the show, somebody had tweeted back to me that would Isak at this point, if we were to bring him in, feel like a downgrade from Vlahovic? He only has 4 goals and 1 assist this season, but Sociedad are struggling with creating chances. They're going through a down time, but last season he did score 17 goals and get 2 assists. So what are you guys thinking there? Do you think it would be too big of a step down now that we've seen Vlahovic? And again, some of this is the marketing and all the hype and all of that, but ultimately he is being looked at as the next striker down from Haaland. Like if you miss out on Haaland, this is the guy that you need to go for, not Isak. And a lot of people wanted Isak before we started really getting into, before January started, before we knew that we were in for Vlahovic, a lot of Arsenal fans would have taken Isak. But now there's been a lot of scouting reports done on Vlahovic. He's been scoring a lot of goals. He's hype right now. We know we're in for him. So if we ended up with somebody else like Isak, would you guys be disappointed? Would you feel like, wow, we didn't really get the perfect person? Because there's also so different as well. Like Isak is more of a he is more, to me, more of an Arsenal player that he seems like an Arsenal player of old to me. Somebody very speedy, very technical, good technique. Like he he's a fun player to watch, but he definitely doesn't have the output that Vlahovic has now, and they're similar ages. And also, you would have to pay probably similar amounts of money, maybe not on the agent side, but in terms of fee to Sociedad that you would be paying Fiorentina from Vlahovic. So would that be a huge downgrade for you guys? And I know Isak is injured, but we're just talking in general. Because if we don't get Vlahovic now, we could end up with Isak in the summer. So I get that he's injured now, you guys, but yeah. Ale is saying Isak is more doable in the summer. Yeah, I think he would be. Anton Dunn says, I prefer Isak. Don One says, I like Isak. Captain says, Isak isn't on Vlahovic's level. Hey, Panduro says, if we get Vlahovic this window, I think it shows Arsenal's ambition. They'll have to spend big in the midfield as well to replace Xhaka. That's the thing is like, you know, if we were to never have went in for Dusan Vlahovic ever and just showed up with Isak in the summer, I think people would view that as the same-ish kind of like transfer strategy that we've been going with. Even though Isak would cost quite a bit, I don't think he's as flashy or as big name as Vlahovic. So what that would show is that Arsenal are willing to play the game. You know, they're willing to play the game and to go after big names and big stars and the best of the best, because that's what Arsenal are used to. Now, for me, like Arsenal, for me, is more about like creating stars and not buying them. But this is the new Arsenal. And so one thing that I'm kind of coming to grips with is that this Edu and Arteta version of Arsenal, for me, is probably a fusion of the old and the new. And so we will have the, you know, creating our own stars, but I do think that they will dabble a little bit in the pool with the Chelseas and the Man Uniteds of the league and try to get the best players with the bigger names to show that we can throw our weight around. And that's what Vlahovic signifies for me. I'm not necessarily super convinced that I think that Vlahovic is so much better than all the other strikers that we've been linked with. I think that he's been marketed in a way and he is scoring and doing his thing in a way where he is the shiniest thing in the window. And he's the most expensive. So he is the diamond that they have to get out of the back room, that you have to carry with white gloves and all that kind of stuff. You know, he's not on the regular floor with the rest of the strikers. And so we're going after that, you know, and that's fine. And it would show intent. It would show that we are trying to be ambitious. But I don't necessarily think that if we ended up with Isak in the summer, that I would think that we had failed, you know, because I think Isak is also very good. He's just very different, especially if we got a top midfielder as well. Molly says Isak is more suited for Arsenal. Vlahovic is a fox in the box. I mean, that's something that people have been saying. He is more well-rounded than what people, well, especially people like me, have given him credit for. But he's definitely not Lacazette in that way where he's going to be playing almost like a number 10. So that has to be addressed within the midfield to make up for that. But if you were to bring in an Isak, he can do a little bit more of that playmaking, but he has the ability to run in behind. So they're so different. And so that's what makes it a little bit more like, okay, well, what are we about to do? Because depending on which striker you get, that could also change what kind of midfielder you get. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Myth says Isak has a good relationship with Odegaard. He does, but I also think Odegaard could have a really good relationship with Vlahovic. Like, you know, so I mean, it could be either way, but he does have that like initial connection with somebody that's already on the team. The comments are flying. Give me a second, you guys. I'm going to read some of these super chats really quick. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat, says he's emotional because he's leaving that small club and he can't hide it anymore. And you've also said, thank you again for the super chat, that I love Dr. Martin Luther King. Happy MLK Day, everyone. Thank you so much. It is MLK Day, so thank you so much. Let's see. We strongly need a midfielders, then out and out striker. Yeah, you know, you guys know I'm worried about the midfield. Avi says, I think question. Think we may look to bring in our first choice midfielder, Tielemans or Bruno, if we can get a striker in this window. I think a big striker signing and a big midfielder signing is coming in regardless. Regardless of the order, it's going to happen. I don't know who the players are. I don't know what's going to happen, but I anticipate and I expect a big striker to come in. That's not necessarily in price. That's in how it's going to impact Arsenal Football Club. So that means like not going to get Ollie Watkins and making sure that you get Isak or Vlahovic, somebody like that that's really going to like change it for us. And then the midfielder will also come in because I think we'll need to sell Xhaka as well to bring in the midfielder, and we won't be able to do that until the summer. So that's when that will probably take place. But I do think that's probably why they're looking to do striker now. It's because the biggest striker option that we want can only be completed in January. And if we can't get it done then we'll just go after other targets in the summer. Kill me? Is that what it says? Isak is a better option. Somebody's saying Yo-Yo made a good point. Let's see what Yo-Yo has said. Yo-Yo says Vlahovic saga will end the same way as Awar and Locatelli. They believe in themselves more than they believe in the Arsenal. You know what? And that's fair enough. You know, I do have to say that I get Awar vibes from this because the agent is making it really difficult. Awar, even though I think he would have come had we paid the agent whatever he wanted, I don't think he was necessarily super convinced on us as Arsenal. And so he has stayed where he is and we've moved on and we're fine. You know, I don't really think about Awar on a daily basis. So when you think about Vlahovic, I do think it spoiler alert, I do think that he stays at Fiorentina and ends up at Juventus or Dortmund. And that will be his next step. But I don't think we will worry about it as much because we will end up getting a big striker and we'll move on from it. There's about 300 of you guys in here. I need to see 300 likes. No, I don't need to see 300 likes. Let's say like 100 likes at the very least. Let me check up and see what you guys have been up to. Have you guys been liking the video? Okay, there's 113 likes. So let's get to 150 before the end of the stream, if you guys don't mind. So yeah, I think it'll end kind of similarly to that. But again, there are other options and I think we'll be fine. Even though this one will hurt because it's such a big deal. Let's see. Dave Riley says, absolutely no point in trying to convince a player who doesn't want to come to the club, focus attention elsewhere. Well, I mean, the one thing Arteta did make like a big thing, like he made a big thing about not wanting to have to convince players to come to Arsenal. So you can either think of it one of two ways, that this is an Adu signing and Arteta's like, well, if you can bring him, you can bring him. If you don't, you don't. What I don't know. Or Arteta believes in him so much that he is willing to do a little bit of trying to convince them because he thinks he's just that good. So there's a couple of different ways that you can think about it, but I kind of in the same camp, Dave, that like if we have to convince him too much, we have to move on. And maybe it is just maybe he is more interested than we know, but the agent is really like making it a difficult time. Let's see. Capri says, why can't we forget about the striker and concentrate to another player? The only thing is that I think if you think you have a chance, even if it's a small one, I believe we will go all the way until the very end until it's not feasible anymore. So you can't really blame them per se, because I don't think any of us really thought we needed a striker until we knew that we were linked with Vlahovic. It would just be a shame if we went all the way into the end of the window, didn't get Vlahovic, and also didn't get a midfielder. I think that's when I would be a little bit annoyed. Let's see. Cinco Vibe says Arsenal are putting the cart before the horse. Top strikers need top midfielders. We've kind of seen that as well, because as much as Aubameyang irritates me at times, like, I do think some of his struggles at Arsenal have been because of the way that we play and because we haven't had players that could get him the ball. So I do agree with what you're saying, but I do think that a striker, the right one, could prove to be somewhat of a cheat sheet until we get into the summer to kind of get us into the top four, or get us really, really close. So I agree with I agree with what you're saying, but then also it also comes down to opportunity. So if this is the only time we can get him, similar to Aubameyang, if we had maybe waited until the summer to try to get Aubameyang because he left Dortmund in January, we may have not have been able to get him, because at that point Aubameyang was at the peak of his powers. So it may be a little bit of that. Like, it's an opportunity, so we have to go for it. Mo the First says, DiMarzio just said talks with all interested clubs have stopped currently due to Vlahovic's wage demands and agent fees. So, yeah, I mean, we're at a standstill, and that works out for the agent. That really works out for the agent, because he doesn't want him to go anyway. So it's basically, for him, it's, well, either I get a big bag full of cash and he moves, or we wait and we do what I want to do and wait until the summer or until your contract runs out. So that works in the favor of the agent. So as far as I'm concerned, if talks have stalled, that's because the agent has made it so difficult and he got his way. Yo-Yo says, not convinced Arteta wants Vlahovic. Smells of Adu to me, since he is looking at Serie A for a while now. Yeah, I mean, you could look back at the Locatelli thing. People would tell me that it's different because it wasn't really out there that our interest was there. Our interest was there. We didn't have a chance, but we still went after him, and then they just used our interest to get him to where he really wanted to go. And yeah, so it could be Adu. I don't know who it is, but yeah, we'll see. Lunatic Friend says Fiorentina is not willing to sell Dusan Vlahovic in January and are convinced to keep him until the end of the season. So if these reports are true, to me, that just seems like we're in a place now where it's a standstill, and, he might be happy to just stay. If it gets too difficult, he may just say, why don't I just stay? Why would I, rock the boat, for a club that I'm not 100% sold on? So we'll see. The Truth Says Free, thank you so much for your super chat, said this one's for the killer whale. Chambo, absolute legend. What a guy. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, so let's stop spamming the chat. Hold on, you guys. Let me get this guy out. He has 1 million accounts, and it's really weird. So Rodney says they should go for Isak instead. I mean, we'll need a second option if it doesn't come through. Lone Star Londoner says break the bank and get Vlahovic. I don't know, you guys. I mean, with the reports that are coming out now, of course, there was always going to be reports coming out literally right after the game, because that's the best time to get Arsenal fans to click. But basically now DiMarzio is saying that Fiorentina do not want to sell him, and will keep him until the end of the season. And you never know, Fiorentina and the agent can kind of broker a deal between each other and kind of knock us back as well, so that everybody can kind of get what they want, because they know that people are going to come in the summer. So if the agent can convince Fiorentina that they can get just as much money in the summer if they just wait a couple of more months and not take Arsenal's deal, then those two entities can come together to shove us right on out of there. And that might be what's going on, because the agent does not want this man to go. He is not interested. Let's see. Captain Jaka says 70 million for Vlahovic is a deal, though. I mean, yeah, it doesn't. It's not like a huge. It's not like It's not an astronomical fee, like that. For me, it's more the agent fee and the wages that he'd be on. That for me would throw off things a little bit, because as well, like, he's 22 years old. You put him on 300 grand a week, or even 150 grand a week. You've just set a precedent that young, players can come in and get 100 grand a week right off rip, and 150 grand off rip. So it does set a weird precedent, especially when we just got our wage bill down like that. But the 70 million is not really what's like, it's not really a big deal. Yo-Yo says Arsenal missed out on the willing Higuain. David Villa, Xabi Alonso, Juan Mata because of finances. If the club want Vlahovic or Isak, then they should get him at all costs within reason. Fair enough. So yeah, it's one of those where it's kind of like we're at the point now where it's like a stalemate. And so I just want to ask you guys again, do you guys think that this will get done? Or do you think we should move on? The community poll that I have up is, should we move on? So I want to know, should we move on to something else? Let me know. Do you think it should be a midfielder? Do you think it should be another striker? Or do you believe that he will come to Arsenal? Have you seen something, or do you think that we're just in normal negotiations and things will get over the line? Let me know what you guys think. Let's see. Cancun says, sources say if Arsenal meet the demands of Arthur Melo, Juve will get Dennis Zakaria. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, fair enough. As long as we don't have to buy him full out and do an obligation, that is not what we need to be doing for him. We need to see him first before we spend the money on him. But fair enough. I mean, it'd be nice if we could get Dennis Zakaria, but there you go. Cancun says, not sure if I can trust them. So maybe it's not a good source, maybe. Ify says, that's a huge wage for a 21-year-old. Interesting. Matt Butler says, it's hard to put a price tag on a young 20-plus goal a year striker. For me, it is. Like, it's difficult, but I do think that it has to go right, or else it could go really, really wrong, because not only, could he be a flop potentially, but then you've set a precedent that most of your players will want 150 grand a week. So there's that. Let's see. Cinco Vibe says, yes, midfielders in. You're Huge says, did you see Vlahovic saying sorry goodbye 2 times after goal and halftime, and then after his goal, he hugged his coach? I mean, he may be saying this. We're looking at it as saying goodbye, but it could be, I'm sorry I put you guys through this. I'm staying. I'm committed to the club. Sorry, Fiorentina fans. Like, it could be looked at as so many different things. Don One says, move on. Tanball says, and this club just moving really slowly, or really slow. I mean, it always feels like we move really slow in the window, doesn't it? Let's see. 6 million says Melo is a massive no-no for me. Yo-Yo says Kante had third party fees that Wenger on principle had no interest in paying. The club went for 34 and the rest is history. It costs big to be a big club. And I agree with this. If it's the right person, you should pay, to a certain extent. But if we have the money, which I feel like we do, I still think it has more to do with convincing the agent and Vlahovic to go rather than the fee, personally. Because we knew it was going to cost a lot of money. Like, let's be real, Let's see. Kelson says, so want Vlahovic, but what if he doesn't meet the expectations? That's my fear. I mean, that's the risk that you have to take, and those are things that we can always talk about. What are our expectations if he does come in, but ultimately, every transfer is somewhat of a risk, and the higher the fee, the bigger the risk is. But sometimes the bigger the reward as well. And what we've seen from our transfer strategy over the last window, or even maybe two, if you take Willian out, you can say that the Party Gabriel window was okay, and then they brought in Odegaard as a loan. So if you look at some of that stuff, you can say that like maybe it will go right. Because it's not like when we brought in Pepe and there was like no vision and no process and no nothing. But big, like no risk, no reward, so we just have to hope that if he were to come in, that he would hit the heights that we would expect him to. Ethio says Dusan Vlahovic, 100% Arsenal. Let's see. Tony says my heart says what it sees what it wants to see. No, I hear what you're saying. Lone Star says every player has a price. Don One says not sure Vlahovic heart is in it. Ivy says I think he is staying. We're just wasting our time, in my opinion. Let's see. Dale says he's going to City because City can't get Holland. I also saw a report that City want João Felix, and like if I'm thinking about it not from an Arsenal perspective, if that would be the striker / center forward / false nine that I would go for if I was City, because he is dying at Atletico. He's such a talented young player, and that's who I would go for if I couldn't get Holland. But if they were to go after Vlahovic, it wouldn't surprise me as well. So they're going to be really big clubs in for Vlahovic that don't get Holland, and that is why we're going after him now. It just works. It works against us a little bit because we don't have Champions League football. We're not in the Champions League spots. We're not a known Champions League team right now, so we can't even. I think if we had that, it would be a lot easier. If we had been in the Champions League over the last 3-4 years. Even if we were sitting in 5th, I think that they could trust that we would be a Champions League team and we'd be in it all the time. But I'm not sure that they want to take that risk. I think they want him in a Champions League team next season. And Juventus, they're right on the edge. But again, he'd be able to stay in Italy. So there are some pluses to that, so hey. Susan says, why not come out and say he's staying instead of coming out and putting out an emotional farewell, second player hugging and kissing Vlahovic, very revealing. Y'all, I don't know. It feels like they're playing games. Or maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not even about to sit here and try to act like I'm going to go watch it again and see if I feel like I'm seeing a goodbye. Because I feel like I missed the penalty. My bad. Funky Bunky says, sorry for being off topic, but will the game against Liverpool get postponed or not? The word around town is that we're not sure whether we're going to be able to field the team. Surprise, because it's not like we've done anything but loan out more players since the last game that we played against Liverpool. So there is kind of murmurs around that we may not be able to, we don't have the right amount of players for that. So we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, you guys, very, very interesting to see what's going to happen. There's about 340 of you guys here. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Let's do a little bit of Q&A. If you guys want to go ahead and drop some questions in here, we can stay for another 10 minutes or so, and I can answer some questions if you guys are interested. Let's see. Susan says, plenty of players miss penalties and don't do what he did. When you're 3-0 up, why not come out and say you're staying? No, I get what you're saying. But I feel like I can't get into the conspiracy theories right now. I just kind of want the deal to be done if it's going to happen. But it was strange. What I saw was strange, so maybe there is something in it. Marcus Martin says, would you mind us getting Isak instead? I wouldn't mind. because I'm more concerned about the midfielder. I think everything opens up for us once we replace Granit Xhaka. And when our midfield is solidified, like I think things will really change. And then obviously we still need another midfielder for a striker for sure. But I think what I'm looking for is just somebody that can link play, somebody that's quick and with at least the potential to become something special at Arsenal. And so when I look at Isak, I know that he's struggling, but I've been trying to watch Real Sociedad play because I'm so interested in the player. And what I've noticed is that they're really struggling to create chances. And so they look like a team that's going through a low period. And so when I see that, it's hard for me to look at strikers and say, well, you're not performing well. It's hard to score goals when you're not really getting the ball that often and your team is struggling to create chances. And I've seen him play really well. I saw him play well with Odegaard, and last season he was a revelation, which is the reason why Real Sociedad got rid of them. It was a buyback clause, I think, from Dortmund and put him on a higher release clause because they know the kid is special. So he may have not have had the explosion, that Vlahovic has had this season, and he's not really getting the same PR that Vlahovic is getting. But if we were to bring in the right midfielder and Isak instead of Vlahovic, I would not be upset, especially if that's who the club wanted and they had scouted him correctly and they know that he can do the job. He's not the finished article. So we'd have to be patient, but I almost feel like we're going to have to be patient with Vlahovic as well because I'm not sure that it's just going to naturally translate to the Premier League like that. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Super chat. Let's see. Praise Aqua. Thank you so much for your super chat. Says, not sure why this is a subject. A little closer attention and everyone will know that Vlahovic, with his agent, always planned on staying the season before leaving. Rejected Atletico and contract. I mean, thank you so much for your super chat. It's a subject because we have to talk about it because we're clearly in for him. We are trying to put in bids. And so for me, even if you think, okay, well, he rejected Atletico, if he rejected Atletico, then he'll reject you. But if we don't talk about ifs, ands, or buts and what could happen and what could not happen, then there's no point in doing shows and there's no point of podcasting or content creating or anything. That's kind of the job. So whether or not I believe it's going to happen or not doesn't mean that I'm going to keep the conversation away from the viewers. And that's kind of why it's a subject. So I get that you probably don't think he's going to come, and I don't really think he's going to come either, but it's important to have the conversation nonetheless. So, but thank you so much for your super chat praise. Let's see. I'm trying to go back and look for the questions. Ham6 says, what's your take on Tavares' attitude? I don't really have a take. I think that it's been squashed. Tavares played in the very next match, and he came in and he played poorly against Nottingham Forest. It was clear that his mind wasn't into the game. And I get that people felt like he was a scapegoat and there were other people that were playing just as bad, if not worse. But if you can think about it a couple of different ways, but Arteta clearly expects more of Tavares, and that's why he took him out. And he also had Kieran Tierney on the bench, where he didn't have Tomiyasu and he didn't have another center back to take out Holding. So Cedric and them kind of had to stay in. Tavares was clearly upset because he was getting taken out at the 30th minute, which is very embarrassing for him. But in terms of his attitude, I think he's perfectly fine. I haven't really seen anything for me that I feel like we need to be alarmed. I don't think he's not giving me Guendouzi vibes at all. And so I think he's going to be fine. And the fact that Arteta played him the very next game lets me know that I feel like things are fine, so I don't really have a huge take on it, but I think it was kind of overdone, in terms of people thinking okay, this is going to be it for him and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if he'll make it long term, but I'm not sure he's going to be somebody that's going to cause us so many issues where we'll have to he'll be iced out and we'll have to his value will drop. I think it's fine. Let's see. Avi says, what do you do for a living? So I don't do this full time. I do make some coins from this, but basically I'm a freelance presenter. So I mostly work with like LAFC, which is the MLS team out here in Los Angeles, and do some freelance work for other companies and stuff like that. And then I also have um, rental income as well. So that's like kind of like my main source, and then this as well. So it's kind of like here, there, and everywhere. But that's kind of what I do for a living. The Truth Says Free says, thanks for a great show. Please, everyone, help the channel you love, like, share, sub, and become a member if you can. Night, happy MLK Day, most importantly. Thank you so much, Truth Says Free. Good night, and I'll see you soon. Ivy says, where do you think we will finish this season, especially with United struggling? If we don't get a midfielder, I think it's like, oh, what are we going to do? But because I don't think we have enough strength and depth in midfield, not with El Neni in there. And I think Sambi is also struggling a little bit. He wasn't as bad as I thought, like you guys said. So I was wrong about how bad he was against Liverpool. He wasn't as bad as I thought. It was mostly the first half that it kind of tainted my view on how he was. But I think we'll finish somewhere between, I think we'll finish either sixth or seventh, fifth or sixth. Right now, I think we'll struggle with the team that we have to get into the top four and stay there, because we are still, in my mind, lacking a little bit of something up top, and our midfield is not good enough. We really needed to replace Granit Xhaka, but I understand that we couldn't address every single thing. Like if you had addressed Granit Xhaka and gotten rid of him, then we might have not gotten Ramsdale and Tomiyasu, and we still would have had issues. And that's why I just kind of think like we're the team that is probably a little bit ahead of schedule. Most is probably because like some of the other teams aren't playing as well, but also because we're playing a little bit better than maybe we thought. And so now we're trying to push a little bit more, but I'm not sure that the club even thought that they would be this close to top six or top four. I think they thought we'd be pushing for top four, or sorry. I don't think they thought that we would be this close to top four, but they probably thought before the season started that we would be pushing for top six. So I think fifth or sixth is probably where we will land. And when we get our striker and our midfielder, I would expect us to get top four with the team that we have, because they'll be a year better, more experience, and we'll have kind of like the finishing touches on the group of players that we have now. And they just need to grow and get more experience together. That's where I think we'll finish. AV says, David seems to be the best of all the choices, has experience of being a number 10, so we'll add a new dimension to our attack. Jonathan David is one of those where he's basically a younger, fresher version of Lacazette. Like everything that Lacazette does, Jonathan David does as well, but he's younger, faster, and just more vibes because he's younger and he can do the things, because Lacazette's a little bit long in the tooth, like, you know what I mean? So I think if you're looking for an out and out Lacazette replacement, that's who you go for. Now, I'm not convinced that we are looking for a Lacazette replacement, because I think that Lacazette is a convenient band-aid that we stumbled upon because other things didn't work out, and it's working now. But because we're going so hard for Dusan Vlahovic, which assigning this pivotal to what we're trying to do as a club, I have to think that Arteta had some say-so in it. And because he's not similar, I think they're looking for presence in the box. They're looking for presence and attitude and a little bit of cockiness up front. Somebody that can do a little bit of the link play, but ultimately that I think that's what makes me more excited about the midfield, is because if you go with a Vlahovic, then your midfield does have to change. And I feel like your midfield almost has to be a midfield 3, because you're not getting that guy to really drop in as much. You're not getting that second number 10. So having 2 CDMs and 1 10 puts too much of the emphasis of creation on Martin Odegaard. So that might be what opens the door to bringing in a Tielemans, somebody who can play in a midfield 3 with Odegaard. but then you have to get a number 6. So it really makes it more interesting, like when you look at the options. But I'm not convinced that we're looking for another Lacazette. I think Lacazette has worked with what we're doing now, but things are going to change based on who we get this summer. Let's see. Tony says, is there any player we have been linked to this window that you wouldn't take? Renato Sanchez. Full stop. The guy, I watched him yesterday, and I just thought I would love for the Arsenal fan base to watch him outside of a compilation, because I know that he looks good on compilations. I know that he's wavy. I know that he has sauce. I know that he can dribble. But that guy is not that freaking good. He looks so good on compilations, but he just doesn't, he's not the meat and potatoes of your team. He's definitely an extra player that you have that can do something different. You're never going to build your team around Renato Sanchez because he just doesn't have enough in his locker. He can basically just dribble. He has no goals, no assists. He's not a good passer. And for me, a midfielder that is not really a good passer, you need to be elite at something else. And he's not, so Renato Sanchez is somebody, and also with his injury record and stuff, he's just not somebody that I would want at the club at all. And so whenever I see his name pop up and I see people getting all like, oh, this is the person that we need, I'm just like, oh, you guys, please watch him actually play like a full match. Like, it's actually like, why are we linked with him? He wants a big move, but if I was him, I'd go to AC Milan or some shit. Like, that's what I would do. I would go to AC Milan, and because he is not cut out for the Premier League, already been there, hasn't done shit, so for me, Renato Sanchez is somebody I'm not trying to see in an Arsenal shirt. Let's see. So yeah, you guys, let's see. 6 million says he didn't look good in that game, but David was the same for me. Are you talking about the game yesterday where they played against Marseille? The thing about that is that every time I've watched Lille play, Jonathan David has had like bright spots and has played well. Every time I've watched Lille, Sanchez has either not played, or when he was out there, he's done nothing. But Jonathan David is a little bit different, but I get what you're saying. Jonathan David was not really special yesterday, but you may be able to attribute some of that to them being down to 10 men so early in the game. But when I watch Renato Sanchez play, when I watch him play full matches, I just think, what are they watching? Because I just don't see it. It's not computing. Maybe I don't know ball. It could be that. But yeah, and I would take, like, I'd rather play Aziz. Like, I wouldn't take I wouldn't take him. Something about him is just not for me. So yeah, that's the main one. The Tielemans one interests me just a little bit because he's not somebody that I particularly like that much. I think he's a really good player, but I don't think he's two-way enough. But if you're looking at him, you're looking at a midfield 3 as far as I'm concerned, because you just bought Martin Odegaard, and for me, he is somebody that we should be building the team around. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, so what would go well with Tielemans and Odegaard? I don't feel like that's necessarily Thomas Partey. That worries me just a little bit, but that would mean that we need to bring in a nailed on number 6. And if you have a midfield 3, that would allow you not to have a striker that needs to drop in, which allows Vlahovic to do what he does best. So I love these, like, when this type of stuff comes up where we can start talking about what the tactics will be like, how the team will change. Those things are interesting to me, but I don't really like the whole agent thing and talk about the fees and stuff. That's what I really don't like about the transfer window. Avi says, is there a striker you would suggest Arsenal to sign that hasn't been linked with us before? Let's see. I mean, because Isak really was the one for me, if I'm honest. Let's see. If we had the coins, and like, okay, so there's 2 players that I would love for Arsenal if we had Champions League, and like we were the old Arsenal that I knew could actually attract these players like that. Which is like Champions League budget. Jessica would go after João Felix and Frankie de Jong. Like, those are two players that I feel like in past Arsenal we would have been able to get. And I think they would be interesting players to have in this particular team. And they're just techie ballers that you want to watch play, you know. So João Felix is somebody that we've never really been linked with, but if we had the coins, I would love to have him at Arsenal. But there's not really a lot of strikers that I really like that much, because I think the striker market is quite weak right now, and we have to wait until like the next 2 to 3 years to see if this particular group ends up being anything. But somebody I don't want anymore is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'll say that for sure. I'm looking at him, and I know he's coming back off an injury, but there's just something I'm just like, like, no. Him and Ollie Watkins, I don't want either one of them. But Isak and Vlahovic I would take, for sure. And I would even take Jonathan David, but knowing that that would mean that it would be somewhat like a Lacazette type of thing. So, yeah. All right, you guys. Richarlison is a good shout. I think he needs a move, like, badly, and he does not deserve to like really like suffer with Everton the way that he is. So he's definitely somebody that I would imagine a team that's not in the Premier League would be looking at and should be looking at. Because he's a really good player that's developed quite well, but he's at a team that like he's at a club that's just suffering, and it's sad to see. Yes, Nashville, you missed the entire show. I am done now. I'm going to leave. Thank you for being late. Now you need to watch it from the beginning. But again, you guys, if you missed like the whole beginning section, basically the Vlahovic update was the news about what his agent wanted, that Vlahovic wants 8 million euros and he wants 10 million euros. And so he also wants 20% of any future sales. So basically the agent has put us in a position where it's like you either have to pay silly money for this guy or get out, you know? And so it feels like we're at a standstill. So we'll see what happens. If you guys did miss the show, make sure that you guys go back to the beginning and watch it, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's see, tomorrow, Tuesday, I'll be on the Football Terrors. No, I won't be on the Football Terrors tomorrow. Actually, I won't get to stream until later on. So maybe about this same time tomorrow, we'll do something if there's an update. And then on Wednesday, we'll do the preview just in case the game goes ahead. So make sure that you guys subscribe and all that stuff. Make sure that you connect with me on Twitter at SheKnowsArsenal, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.